Welcome to Discerning News, where we bring you current stories from a bigger picture perspective. The purpose is to inspire clarity and enthusiasm for your unique journey. We are back for another episode of, and what are we in?
Discerning News.
Spiritual Perspectives. How about that? So,
13.
13.
That seems pretty lucky. So, this is going to be a really good one, huh?
Yeah, I think it's a good number.
I'm feeling
It's a good
lucky.
number.
I'm
You got
feeling
lucky
very
lately, Lisa?
I don't feel luck. I'm very fortunate. So we are glad to be back here with you guys, the trio here, and we are going to be sharing some great news stories today. Hopefully, some inspiring moments for you, listeners, and we thank you for listening. So, hey, Tiger, let's kick it off.
All right. The first story I'm going to draw on for us to regroup around is I don't know if many of you have heard this, but particularly in America, but other countries now, the latest story is that Canada has experienced some of these violence or abuse to Tesla outfits. So this is kind of that, political stuff going on where people are abusing these cars or dealerships based around that Elon Musk is doing these things. So this is in the news of late, and people are doing things like throwing Molotov cocktails or keying the car. That's where they scrape the car. Or they had one where they were stripping all the tires from the cars in parking lots, and so they're doing similar things. Started expanding to Canada now. That was the latest news of it. But I thought I'd bring it up because it's an interesting thing that's just happening. A lot of times I was saying before we got started, it's like, I don't want to talk about this stuff. But it is what's going on. And when I saw it and I just relaxed a little bit more, I had some interesting insights. So I just wanted to pass that along and see what you all pick up from that news story.
Interesting. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind around a spiritual perspective is there's a specific energy that's around. And so a lot of people, if they resonate with an energy field or an energy that's prevalent, they will jump on the bandwagon. So I say this in the sense, if I saw there was a guy yesterday, I watched a little YouTube thing, and he had a Tesla, and there was a video of a guy walking up to it, and then on the front wrote something like, you're a Nazi or whatever. And so the guy,
people who own Teslas are Nazis or something.
Oh, yeah, something like that. But the guy who walked up, he had a mask on, but they found him. So someone was like, I know who he is. And his name was obviously being put out for being prosecuted now, right, for violence. But what I'm trying to say is energetically, the gentleman who walked up to that car and did that looked a certain way. Okay. And so he looked maybe like he might have a bit of animosity or a bit of confusion, a bit of like, I don't give a crap what I'm doing in the world. That was just what I saw from what he was wearing, what he had on his face. And so whenever there's an energy that's very prevalent, especially an energy of confusion, a confused energy that wants to destroy, wants maybe anxiety, fearful, whatever, man, people could just gravitate towards that, and then they can do all kinds of outlandish stuff. And so that's what comes to me about this, is that there's an energy, and it happens on both sides. It happens with positive energy, right? Like people can come together and they can build or they can do, but then with negative energy, they'll come together and they can destroy, and there's fear and whatever that is going to be, played out. So it's people playing out a specific energy right now on the planet. And this is a very one that you brought up this week. And I'm glad you brought it up because of the fact that to be aware of why things like this happen all over the place. Like you're saying, it was primarily America. Now it's Canada, and who knows where else it's going to be, but it spreads like a wildfire.
Yeah.
Wildfire. Fire and flower.
Yeah.
So that's my spiritual perspective. No, it wasn't. Next.
I'd like to, add that if I am feeling confused or anxious, there's a subliminal, not so subliminal message, So the fellow wrote, something about people who own Teslas are Nazis. So what is he feeling inside? Is he feeling controlled? And it's great to rebel at the appropriate time. It's great to protest, but to go out and deface someone else's personal property, well, obviously has nothing to do with, Elon Musk. He just happened to have bought a Tesla some time back, probably. It's just, there's not a fairness there. So I take your point that, for those people without their own direction, that get caught up in revenge or are feeling, anxious and threatened. So, it's not just this one area where this person, that soul in that physical body, is feeling threatened or anxious. There may be many areas in their life, and they don't have that inner security to know that no matter what, the big picture is everything's going to be okay. And it kind of, it'll lead a little bit into my story where I talk about the rules and regulations of society. And, so I'll hold my fire on that. That it's kind of related.
They always are, aren't they?
Yeah, they always find a way. The needs of the soul. This is interesting. I mean, we don't talk about these things before we get going, other than making sure everybody knows what the big picture is going to be. And I was actually going to share pretty much what the two of you were picking up. So I'll just add to it, really. The first thing I'll just bring up is, I never really had, we got a good friend of ours who said, I don't have a dog in that fight, It's like, what is this all about? But maybe in the last 10 years, I've started to like Tesla. I actually took a test drive and went, and this is a bunch of years ago now, right? So it's like, okay, well, this is a pretty cool thing, and I'm getting on that bandwagon and stuff like that. And the latest thing that happened, I just started thinking, I've some our brothers and sisters, we have some good people who do the work that we do, and they have 2 Teslas, and that was my first exposure. They let me drive it and so forth. It was really a great experience. So I really appreciated that. So, but now I start thinking about like, oh shit, is somebody gonna do something to them in their car? And and they don't have any axe to grind per se. They're, matter of fact, they might even be with what people are concerned about.
Yeah, they're pretty liberal.
But
those folks you're talking about.
They're
so they would be more.
They would be with
there.
the thing. But now I'm like, oh, okay. Well, my friends, I get all kind of, now I'm getting a little bit possessive. I'm protective. Like, well, what's going to happen to them? And that's the energy I want to talk about, which is your point. Is there's a thing there where people are looking and they're not seeing, right? It's like getting caught up in the headline and not actually reading into what the article is saying, type thing, right? I'm using that as a metaphor, right? So I can get if I don't have direction, which is what your point was, if I don't have personal direction and we have people in our society who aren't organized, they don't have their own purpose set clear, then they become usable instruments. And people who can do this are typically usable instruments. I'm not saying that those people are bad. I'm saying that because they don't have direction, they can get skewed, right? And I liken this back, years ago, we had this, the Vietnam conflict. And when those soldiers were coming back, they were spit on and they were told that they were baby killers and the whole thing. And that was the movement back then. There were people rebelling because there was too much oppression. They didn't want to be involved in this kind of conflict. And so the soldiers were the easy targets, right, to do that. And then later on, things got more organized. People got smarter. Like, well, we shouldn't be doing that to them. Let's go work with the people who are making the decisions, right? That, I mean, and that's a smarter way to do it because the people are just following, what they thought was right.
Yeah, my
right?
dad was drafted.
Exactly.
He didn't go, hey, I want to go to Vietnam.
That's right. That's right. And so this, to me, this comes back to that point that the two of you are bringing up is here we have this whole now, for those who believe in this, you have waves of energy that move through planet Earth and souls that come in to work with certain of those energies. And that's why you have that kind of sense of that history keeps repeating itself. Right. And it's because you have all this energy that moves in. And then there's these souls that just that are part of that come to work with that. And that's part of their life process. Right. But the interesting thing is you can kind of watch it on a chart of like, okay, this is what happens. And then, big empire, and then Rome falls. And, before that, you get the big Greece, and then, Persian Empire, and then it falls, right? You just see this repetition over and over again. And so to me, I start looking at that bigger picture, and here it is in a smaller, it's not a big empire thing, but it is a smaller indication of like, here we are going after people who just doing their everyday thing. They're an electric car. I mean, my goodness, they just want to do their piece. And here they're getting a part of this situation that they're never even signed up for. And so to me, that bigger picture is about the souls without direction, right? Because if I have, and this is what it comes down to, this is my regrouping of the whole story, is if I have my personal direction clear, then I cannot be manipulated or moved at least too far, right? I know I'm going to be susceptible to stuff, but when I have my own direction, I know what the heck I'm doing, and I can evaluate, okay, is this going to really help me get to where I need to be, or is this a complete right turn, or am I going backwards? And so that energy of direction spiritually is an absolute top-notch priority. It's right up there with knowing the big picture. That's why we talk about, click on the link and get the video series, because it gives that big picture. It allows me to go, right, that's part of what I'm here for. And now I can organize my direction. Now I can start working with it and find my niche in life, right? I mean, imagine if more of us did that. Imagine more people in the world just started getting focused on, number one, the big picture of life and what their direction is. What is your direction? What is your direction today? Are you going to the grocery store? You're listening to this? What else are you going to do? So it starts with that simple thing, and then everything else sprouts. Or naturally, we were talking about another thing in the green room before we got started.
The green living room.
That's right. We were talking about how one thing builds and breeds to another, right? And it's a natural outgrowth. So it's amazing what happens when I have direction and I maintain that direction. So much stuff is positive.
With consistency also.
Yes, that's right. It can't be up, down, up, whatever. So to me, this is all about my personal direction. This is what it reminds me of, is how important it is for me to have my personal direction as someone who believes in living a spiritual life, as a personal growth, a way of life, how important direction is. So I don't get caught up in personality or what, the newscaster says, or this, night show host says, or, what my neighbor is going on about. I can evaluate that and be of service where I need to be, and know that sometimes being of service is not where I need to be. But anyway, direction is the key. And if I can have that clear, I can be inspiring to other people, and I can give some pearls of wisdom because I'm on that track. I'm on my path. So personal direction spiritually. All right, team, that was our first story. Stay tuned. We're going to come right back for another exciting story and discerning news.
When you gravitate towards trust, life moves with more grace and ease. One way is staying in the now and mastering your inner world, those psychic perceptions that show up through feelings, knowings, hearing, and seeing. If you are ready for more clarity for your direction in life, By honoring your time and trust, check out the link in the show notes for our next Intuition Now Masterclass, where we explore your inner abilities and support you in getting your own answers and start trusting in yourself.
And we're back. And are y'all ready for the next story? Because Tom is ready to share it. How about it, Tom?
Yeah, my story today is about the legal system. And,
Ooh,
we talk about,
No.
out of the two natures of man, the intellectual and the feeling nature, that science, was born and the religions were born out of the feeling nature, and science was born out of the intellectual nature. And then from there, we, have our rules and regulations of society, and which are, come from scientific truths. Like if I run in front of that truck, it's going to obliterate my physical body as it's moving down the highway. And we have, moral values, so respecting each other. And, it's really important that, it's a part of the game, the rules and regulations. And so I would say the legal system. And so the story that I was attracted to was the one where the federal judge has had created these court orders and wanted the deportees that were part of the terrorist gang, turned around in mid-flight, and that was the story. Because there's an act from the 1800s or 1700s. I think it was the 1700s, the Alien Something Act, and
I think it was 1700s.
yeah, 1700s. And when you look into the language of the act, there is you'll have lawyers on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the bench, you might say, that could conceivably argue the case that it makes sense for the deportations to take place under this act. But you can also have people that will question, that as well. Is that really the valid statute, under this situation? So I bring that up, and we brought this up before. And I think at this time, I guess I'll turn it over because those are the best facts, and then I'll wrap it up with my spiritual thoughts and the bigger picture perspective after that. So who's next?
So, so just to add on to what you're saying, this for those who haven't been following any of the stories or stuff, this is all related to immigration and deporting people in particularly for America, but there's other countries. Obviously, this is becoming a big issue around the world. But that's what this is connected to, and they're just deporting
the gangs, the terrorist gangs, or
that came over the border when the border was opened, right?
So that's what the story is about. That they're deporting a bunch of people, and in this case, criminals and so forth. There's concern about people getting, wrapped up in that aren't part of the criminality. But that's the story of it, and so the judge. They're sending these people out in planes, getting rid of them, and then the judge is saying, "Wait a minute, something's off here. You got to turn the plane around." All right, so that's the story that you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that the thing that I'm hit with here personally is the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, right? And I'm going to end up finishing there on that, but. All of it, you hit the nail on the head. All of it comes back down to that balance of thought and feeling. And in our society, everything operates based on respect, right? It's respect is the key word. That's the operative word that allows us to get along, right? So, my rights end where yours begin and yours begins where mine end, that whole thing. Okay, so the respect is another way to say, in order for me to live in an organized and civilized society, I'm going to have to conform, right? And there's a part of me that doesn't want to do that. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it, where I want to do it, kind of thing, But conforming actually just means respect. That's what it means. In order for me to work with other people, I'm going to end up conforming one way or another. This is the thing. If if I have a relationship with someone, I'm going to end up conforming to a degree so that I can have that relationship. And the other person too will have to do, we have to give and take basically. Now, if I apply that to the world and a society and the country, I'm going to have to conform a bit, in order to play the game. So to me, it comes back down to respect for myself, respect to where I begin and end. That's what is the initial stimulus for me. And then also with that in mind, right, coming from that pivot point, like I need to respect myself, self-respect. That whole thing about, love yourself so you can love other people and, feed yourself and then you can feed other people. All that is true. I have gone through a myriad of ups and downs with that to just test it, right? To see how, right? That is true. There is no other way. Now, I know some of you are going to listen to this and you're not going to believe me and you're going to go try to do it anyway. Great, right? You won't respect sometimes, then you'll respect too much sometimes. I get it. We all go through that. But at the end of the day, it comes back down to self-respect. Because there's no way for me to actually work with another person or a society for that matter if I don't have that in myself. None. All I'm doing is working off the idea of what I think respect is supposed to be rather than my personal experience of it. It's kind of like saying, and this is probably the better way to say it, is, love to hear your point on this one, is I'm going to get into a relationship and I'm going to give you love based on what I saw on the TV, based on what I was told in school, and based on what I read in a book. Rather than I fully love myself, I know what that feels like, I'm going to share that feeling with my partner. I'm going to share that feeling with my community. And that is a big difference between me trying to put out the idea of love rather than the feeling and the experience of love. So that brings me full circle back to self-respect and in this society. And that's the big key to the whole thing. And so to wrap it up with the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, for me to see clearly what's going on in the environment and what's transpiring there, I have to come to a place, a source, right? For those of you listening, I'm touching my belly and my chest, I've got to come back to that place of self-respect. Otherwise, I have no chance of discerning what this headline is and what's actually going on. Because is it the letter of the law? Is it the spirit of the law? You know what? I'm more of a spirit of the law guy. But you know what? I also know that I need the letter of the law. Otherwise, we don't have one. We lose that structure without the letter of the law. But I need to have that bigger picture to understand what's the spirit of this whole thing. So for me to discern it, I need to come home to that self-respect and then discern it. Otherwise, I am going to be, just like the earlier story we talked about, I will be without direction and I will be used as a pin cushion or used as might say, as confusion wants to use me, right? I become a usable instrument because I don't have that self-respect. I don't know where my own pivot point is. So to me, it comes down to, yes, it's discerning the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, but I need to start from self-respect.
Interesting. Well, so this was an interesting subject for me because of the fact that there's been so much going on in the last 4 years with, especially in America and many other countries also with, people coming in from outside that are not legal and coming through different borders and different systems and through, boats and planes and trains. Actually they have been in different places, but so the thing that really came to my mind and the word is timing. So timing came up to me because irregardless of, what's the right or wrong thing to do, who's leaving the country, who's done this and that. The judge or the judges, I think it was actually one judge, right? Yeah. That was trying to bring these planes back. Well, you know what? He missed the timing. The plane's already gone. So for myself, when I'm working in my life, I recognize that in discerning. Now, of course, a judge, I mean, that's a whole other beast, right? Because he's, talking at a different level, different people, different attorneys, different this, the people in the back who don't like what's going on, the people over here. But when I bring it back down to being practical for my life, when I miss my timing for something, I'm okay. I guess I'll wait till the next time comes around. And in this situation, there's a plane full of illegal aliens going back to a country. You can't really just turn it around and come back because they've already landed. They're already off the plane. They're already in another jail. They're already, who knows what this international waters. There's a whole bunch of scenarios, but I like to really bring it back to being practical in in our lives, because that's what we're really all about. We share these stories, we share these concepts and beliefs and spirituality and but how am I going to make that practical for me? So when looking at it, it's again about timing and the importance of being in my pivot, myself staying cleansed energetically, and being able to make my timing to be in the right place, working with the right people at the right moment for myself. And this judge, he missed the timing. That's just what I'm going to say about it. Missed the timing.
Well, where I got to with all this was that, and to be clear, they're talking about using the something Alien Act, 17 something or another. And they were deporting gang members, that have been the president has deemed them as a terrorist organization. So there's different rules to follow versus the normal deportation of somebody, say, in a green card or, that has some other sort of legal visa status. So, but what struck me about this is that I get really intrigued about the arguments pro and con towards, what, and I used to be an FBI agent, so I have some training in the law, though I was trained as an engineer. I have a real affinity for the law, and I like it. I understand it. I look at statutes and I say, well, this says this, and I know how to look at the elements of what the law is supposed to mean, and I understand case law and I understand how the dynamics of it all work. I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I get it that prior court, when judges have made rulings in the past, that sets case law and precedents. So what struck me was not so much to get caught up in the who struck John, as I often say, legal back and forth, although I have my opinions and preferences, so to speak. What struck me was how I get so interested in all this. Like, I'm ready to click on the next YouTube video to hear more, to hear this person's perspective, to hear that side of the argument. I thought, what is that about, And a couple things was that I often ask myself that, like, I think I want to highlight that if I'm attracted to a novel or a movie or something that's on my mind, recently I've been remind myself to go, so what is that really about? Take it another level deeper. And the feeling that I have is around what Tiger, you sort of alluded to, and Teresa, the good thing about the timing is really interesting what people are putting themselves through because of the timing, that we get down to the letter of the law or the spirit of the law. And, there's a spiritual purpose to, say, a lawyer, and that is to work with facts, get clarity of a situation. And yet we all know lawyers that are, scam artists, really, or they use the rules against people. They use the law against innocent people. So what do we call that? They abuse, the law. So it struck me that, I'm real interested in seeing, are we going to work with the spirit of the law or the rules and regulations we've defined You know, are we going to work with the original purpose of I respect me, I respect you, or are we looking for a way to get over on somebody? And to me, that's an out of balance between the intellect and the feelings. It's an out of balance intellect kind of perspective, a kind of approach to it. And then fairness. So, you know, the intellectual idea they have of fairness to the, say, gang members versus what is the true fairness in this situation. And am I going to be fair to myself first before I'm fair to somebody who might not deserve that, you know, and so this is where we get caught up in all the moral issues and the intellectual toing and froing. And the only solution is how do I come back to what's fair for me and fair for the people around me? And you know, it is important to stand up for the bigger picture and a bigger picture of fairness. But I noticed that I brought this up in one of the earlier episodes as well, that, you know, when my sons were playing basketball and when whichever team is losing, the other parents, the team of the losing parents all start going, hey, that was a foul. And hey, he did this to him. And how come he's not calling that penalty? And, you know, all that stuff starts happening. So whenever we don't like something or we're competing with each other, all of a sudden it's not fair because, oh, that's a bad interpretation of that statute when there's probably no precedence. That's the trouble. Oh, we're coming up. Why are you using such an old statute? Well, you know, they were using a really old, never used statute against Trump a while back. So rather than try to adjudicate who's right or wrong, because there's other facts, there's other perspectives, there's misinformation that gets out there, like in the terms of the timing of the court orders and stuff, it's like I have to get back to, you know, are we erring towards abusing the system and using it against ourselves, or are we working with that the spirit of what was intended and created? Because it's all just a game. Anybody else got something else they want to share about that?
Well, the thing I'll add with what you're saying, you picked it up, is that the adversarial system within things that are legal. And there, you know, my predecessors used to talk about how the legal system, you could get involved into what they would call C zone or a higher level of confusion when it goes out of balance. Right, when it's in balance, it brings balance back to society. It has an energy of bringing justice, you know, the scales, bringing it back in. And so when it goes off, you know, no one's happy, kind of thing. But the adversarial system that's set up in there, if there's not some arbiter that is looking at the big picture, bringing up your point about the spirit of the law, then you basically, that competition that's there, it's meant to be there in order to flesh out, to clarify things. That's what it's meant to do. And so that I need to be aware of that. That's happening around me so that ultimately I can get the balance for myself. And this is a war when I'm out of balance inside myself. I'm in war with my thoughts and my feelings. Right. And so if I don't realize that there is some of that naturally is meant to happen, so I get the best out of it, I get the balance back, then that's, if I forget that, I'm going to be caught up in it. Yeah. And that's the key.
For me spiritually too, that within myself, what concepts do I have, or what moral judgments do I make against myself that keeps me from really tuning into the feeling or the spirit of what was required? And interestingly enough, through the week, you know, I was really regrouping on right and wrong, and experiences that I had as a young child. You know, so I was telling Teresa, she was laughing at the stories, you know, because it's funny little kid stuff in a way, but
it's not, because
unconsciously,
it stays with you, right?
I've kind of, you know, it stayed with me several decades, you know, this experience. And one of the things that, as I was regrouping it, you know, I wasn't thinking of, oh, well, I did wrong then. And I wouldn't do it now, of course, but, almost still carrying that right and wrong vibration or this guilt that we kind of subtly move in, in new situations. And I was sharing with Teresa how, my parents did the best they could, but my guidance was giving me this impression like, it's just all progression. It's just all progression that on the positive side, I was really working with my sensitivity and I was going for what I wanted. On the other side of it, I was learning there were boundaries to that, within our society. And I think with regards to both stories that we're talking about, that's what we seem to be unclear of, that we need more parents to be more spiritual, work with their spiritual helpers or their guides so that they're not passing along a lot of baggage. So in a way, my behavior conformed to society's ideas based on the punishment and so forth that I received. And it was valid and it was the best they could do. It wasn't a big deal really, but what my guidance said, you were so sensitive, you're picking up your mother's guilt for letting you do that, or for not watching you and catching you sooner, Oh, so I picked up the double whammy, kind of a thing. And I guess with both stories, we can just see that there's this toing and froing instead of, because so many of these legal issues that come up, whilst I get intellectually curious, you might say, they do become an abuse. And how do I abuse myself is I hold back on what am I really feeling? What's the spiritual, bigger picture concept there? Because it's all good. And anyway, that's what I wanted to share about.
Okay.
Well, right now we're going to take a little break. And we'll be right back with a positive story from Teresa.
When you arrived back, you were enthusiastic to be here. If you've lost some of that enthusiasm, there's a way to reawaken it. It's by embracing a bigger spiritual picture of your life as a soul and igniting the feeling of freedom within. If you're ready and needing some more enthusiastic mojo for yourself, then follow the link in the show notes to access a free video series created by the Wayshowers College and get ready to start feeling more clarity, hope, and freedom within.
And welcome back. All right, team. We're now, this it was 13, podcast 13, and now you're going to hear our inspirational message, the inspirational story that I think we wanted to convey. So here we go. Teresa, take it away.
Yeah, so the story that I was inspired by this week is around the energy of kindness. So in looking at a lot of the world, we sometimes miss, where's the kindness in people? And this is a big deal. So I found a report and an article about, it was a study by Oxford's Wellbeing Research Center. And it talked a lot about believing how important it is to believe in kindness. That believing in the kindness of others is truly the key to happiness, that belief. And then they talked a bit about Finland. And Finland is, ironically enough, World Happiness Report. It comes from, they're on the top of the list for like 8 years. Finland is the kindest place to be. Okay. They also found that benevolence and positive social connections, such as meal sharing, being together, deliver a happiness boost. And if we believe that we are happier, sometimes living in a caring community also helps that. And one thing I thought was interesting is that happiness isn't just about wealth or growth. It's about trust, connection, and knowing people have your back. And that if we wanted to have a stronger communities and economics, we must invest in what truly matters, each other. Boom. On to you, Thomas.
Well, from a spiritual perspective, that's where investing in myself, if I'm kind towards myself, it's easier to be kind to everybody else. And it really, it just comes right back to that, like if I can nurture myself a bit, if I give myself a break a bit and relax, then it's easier for me to be, kind to other people. Did you want to write something down there? Or?
I'm going to in a second. I just
Oh,
wanted
okay.
to put my pen down here so
Yeah.
no one heard clink, clink.
Yeah. I thought I must have said something
wait a
really
second.
Deep and profound. Something deep and profound. We're going to
Taking
put it down
notes.
there, Tom.
Absolutely.
Everything you say.
Everything I say. Everything I say.
Remember, I got the recording. I could watch it again and again and again. Is
Yeah, that's right.
that all you
So, well, it seems to me that trust is really key. But if as you were sharing earlier, Tiger, like I've tried it the other way, try to trust people outside of me, or unless I trust myself, unless I have enough benevolence for myself, it's not going to translate well. And I may be a do-gooder in that situation. I may be doing what seems to be good or what I've been trained to do or what TV says I should do, something outside of myself. But if it doesn't, and so not all of that is bad, as long as it resonates with me in terms of what I feel. So my motivation, how I move myself comes from what I feel, and then I organize myself, and then I move forward. And there seems to be a lack of that in the world. There are a lot of sensitive souls out there who are struggling because they have all the sensitivity they need. In fact, beautiful, deep sensitivity, beautiful awareness, spiritual, psychic awareness, and yet their concepts or their training is to look outside themselves and doubt that. And so the more that I'm looking within first, that happiness within me exudes out. And then guess what? Everyone around me starts to feel happier, because as I heal myself, just by being relaxed, it helps other people relax.
Another inspiring and good story. I think what I'm going to start with and I'll end with on this one is the keyword leadership. And the reason why I'm going to go there is because what you're hinting on, Tom, is about the more we focus on our personal development, we can't help but become more sensitive to our environment, more sensitive to our feelings, to our what's happening, and our bodies and everything. So that's just a natural outcome. It's a natural outgrowth of that. When I work on something spiritually, I work on myself with my personal development or whatever, in your church, or if you're in the metaphysical community, the more you work on yourself, it is a natural thing to start becoming sensitive to the environment and to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I bring up leadership. I need to be aware that my number one priority is to be leading myself in this life, right? I don't have to have a big flag and, make people go in some direction or something like that. That certainly is a part of leadership, but it's not the core of leadership. It's not the nucleus of what it's all about. And the nucleus is to be able to lead myself, to be in that role for myself all the time, which is my natural state, right? So leadership is where I'll end up with. But the thing that I'm going to add to it is, what do I want to be a part of, right? You have all these, the experiment or, their survey and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of like, well, why are you taking this survey? Of course, everybody likes kindness. And of course, it's almost common sense, but it's easy for me to get caught up in the world out there. And I forget that kindness is in everything I do. I forget that it needs to be a part of my beingness. To add to that is that we talked about this, might have been 2 sessions ago or so, but am I going to be the person who says, I'm going to love that one, but I'm not going to love that one? I'll be kind today, but I won't be kind tomorrow.
Mm.
Oh, that person over there, I'll be kind, but I'm not going to be kind over here. You know, what energy do I want to be a part of in my life? If I want to be a part of something, and you brought the key word up, I have to be consistent. If I don't have consistency in my life, I'm going to be susceptible to the strongest current around me. Whether that's positive, negative, whether, whatever it is, I'll be susceptible to it. Doesn't mean I'll always get sucked up in it, but I'm susceptible to it because I'm not consistent. So kindness is a natural outflow of me being kind to myself, of me being in joy with myself. So sometimes, I have bad days, so I kind of have to go the extra mile in my thoughts and in my body and say, hey, how you doing today, to the cash register, or, but the moment I move myself forward in that manner, my energy lifts, right? It's like, if you see the aura, like the aura expands, right? Gets brighter, or whatever you want to call that. My continence is there. So for me to be consistent in what I want to be a part of, do you want to be part of love? Do you want to be a part of kindness? Do you want to be a part of abundance? Then that's what I need to be feeling all the time. And that it doesn't, so this is what the contrast of that is if I'm jaded, right? It's either being jaded or I'm in the fairy tale of being positive all the time. Right. And we joked about that the toxic positivity, right? It's like living in a fairy tale that I believe everything is going to happen and it'll just come to me and I don't have to do anything. It'll just show up in my lap. Right. And, that's going to lead to this seesaw of energy. So if I want consistency in my life, if I want that kindness in my life, I have to be aware that there are things in my life that can make me jaded. Right? That's that energy of, well, I'll love this one, but I won't love that one. Right? I'll be kind today, but not tomorrow because, that's the day I got to go to work. So that is a inconsistent energy, and it doesn't help me advance spiritually, let alone with people. Right? Then I attract people around me who like that crap. I attract friends that like me being inconsistent and like the fact that I'm kind one day and not kind the other. Like, what kind of friends are that? So that's the key for me to be aware of. And kind of wrapping it up there, I have when I was in the service, was working with these guys. They were very, very, very professional, and they talked about really good guys. Just really top-notch, good guys. And when I say good guys, I mean like they were professional, but like when they were off duty, so to speak, they were kind, they were loving, they had great families, and they did the right thing, especially, as a societal perspective on it. But I remember we were grouping, we were having beers with each other, and we were talking. And the one guy, I was pretty young at that time, and the one guy says, Tiger, you have to be worse than the worst terrorist, but do the best, to do the greatest work. And what he was trying to say to me was, I have to be aware of all this terrible stuff, but I'm here to actually be of service and help things. It's that whole thing about the sheriff who used to be the criminal, and now he's the sheriff, and now he does a great job because he knows what can happen and he knows how to fix it, right? He knows how to, because he's like, okay, that was just a one level of consciousness. Let me move past that to, these are the people, like the policeman without the gun, that's the Andy Griffith show, is that kind of thing. Is like he'd been through a war and all that. Okay, so I don't need to go do that anymore. I know how to work with things above that. But it comes down to me is it comes down to a leadership. As a sensitive, if I'm going to be kind and I want that in my life, I need to have the inner leadership to be that all the time. And I'm going to have my down days. We all know that. You're going to have your down days. We get it. But what's going to be my inner standard? What am I going to lead myself toward? I want to lead myself toward love. I want to lead myself toward abundance. I want to lead myself toward kindness.
Very nice. That felt very kind. So, yeah, for myself, I guess I was really inspired by this short sharing and short, article I found because I really like being kind to people. I mean, like you're saying, Tiger, there are days when I wake up to and I'm like, oh, I just don't feel quite so right, or something moving in on me. And so there's two things that really pop into my mind about kindness. One is discerning. How do I discern those times when I maybe don't feel like being kind to others? And why am I feeling that way? And so one way that for myself that I work with my discernment is I call in and work with my spiritual helpers. We all have a team of spiritual helpers. We brought them in. They came in with us. They're going to leave with us, and they're here to support us 24/7. But we have to do our part. We have to call on them. We have to ask for support. And I feel that with that discernment, and if more people understood the power they have around them, and within them with their intuition, but getting those hunches, insights, and impressions through your spiritual helpers can make people feel not alone. And I feel that's why a lot of people maybe aren't embracing more kindness, because they aren't kind to themselves, because they don't understand the power they have within them. So discernment is one thing. And the other big key for myself around this is judging, and not judging other people and where they're at. And this has been a real big key for myself the last few years, as I've worked with, like, my mom, who moved close to us almost 3 years ago, where she's at energetically, moving back into a job where all those people are at energetically, and knowing that we're all in different places. Some people have had a lot rougher road to go down than perhaps I have, and some have not. But knowing that most people, whenever they're, embracing kindness or not embracing kindness, I'm not going to judge that, because it's really, again, kind of what you were saying, Tiger, about, leadership. It's about, how am I working with my energy? How am I working where I can discern what I'm feeling, how to shift my energy from cleansing, working my guidance, and then moving into that arena of kindness more often than not. And investing in that piece of myself. And that's why we're all here, and why we all do this work, because we have invested not only this lifetime, many, many other lifetimes, to be right here, right now, sharing with you guys. That is a spiritual investment in the bank of spirituality, in the bank of, the universe. And so banking on that and investing in the camaraderie we have, and the people that I'm connected to, and knowing that what that truly matters is having each other, is a real key to kindness. Yeah. So how about that, guys?
Sounds good.
Does that feel good? Does that feel like we're kind enough to each other?
Sounds beautiful to me.
Does that feel like a good place to stop? That feels like,
so.
Yeah. Good podcast.
Great podcast. So we want to thank all of you out there for listening and watching another episode of Spiritual Perspective, Discerning News, and knowing that, in all the news we're out there listening to and around, that there's a different perspective that you might want to just consider when you do hear these stories out there. And we're glad to bring the stories we brought today, because I think that really helped solidify a different perspective for yourself. And we hope that you got a lot out of this episode.
Rock and roll.
Thank you for letting us share.
Until next week, we'll be back. To keep the enthusiasm going, please like, subscribe, or comment below. We would love to hear from you.